Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Rosenfeld, founder of Freshwater Investments, and my guest today is Maria Laine, a fellow at T-Bird with more than 30 years of experience in aerospace and defense. She currently leads business capture and operations at Boeing Defense, Space and Security. Maria was born in Finland, grew up in Sweden, and moved to the US in the mid-70s, so her life and career have truly spanned the globe. She's also a proud mom of two daughters, fluent in Finnish and Swedish, and has worked everywhere from Washington, D.C. to London. And just recently, she returned to Thunderbird as a graduation speaker, which made this conversation even more timely. I'm really glad to have her on the show. Maria, welcome.
Thank you, Alex. Wonderful to be here.
I'm very excited about our conversation, and maybe we can start with the graduation speech and the graduation day. And I know it's been a unique experience for you and your family because your daughter was also graduating on the same day, and that had to be very special moment for you. What was it like for you as both as a parent and an alum to be there?
It was probably a little bit surreal. It was definitely a moment of life coming full circle. Very special day for our entire family. Not just the fact that my daughter was graduating that day, but also my husband and I met at Thunderbird. We were good friends back then, and then a few years later, got together and got married. My sister went to Thunderbird, so with having my parents in the audience, we were reflecting on the fact that this was their third Thunderbird graduation after they'd been to mine and Becca's and my sister's and now our daughter's. So it was just incredibly special. I mean, it's an honor, of course, just to be asked to be a keynote speaker at a graduation of your alma mater anyhow. But that family history really made it extra special. And then the one wish my daughter had for her graduation gift was she wanted us to have a Finland window at the Thunderbird pub. So we sponsored and hosted a Finland window to be put into the pub. And so that was fun for us to all see that coming to fruition, and just kind of a long-term memory of the Rauhala and Laine family legacy and heritage, and all of the wonderful memories that we have from being at Thunderbird. So really a special day.
Yeah, that's an amazing Thunderbird story. So you mentioned that your parents were in attendance as well. Can we maybe start with your family, with your parents? Where did you grow up? Where maybe talk a little bit about your parents. I know you shared their story in the speech, but I would love our audience to hear that story
Yeah,
and to
no,
learn about your family and your roots.
and that's really where I mentioned that the story really began with my parents. They were the first ones, both children, byproducts of, being born during World War II in Finland, in little rural villages in the western part of Finland. But, my father had a special gift for mathematics. And so he had a teacher who really encouraged him to go pursue bigger things in life. And so he ended up at the Helsinki University of Technology in Finland for his master's program. And that's where I was born. So born in Finland, but I was only 6 months old when we actually moved to Stockholm, Sweden. My father wanted to continue his studies, did his PhD at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, where he then was asked to speak at a conference in Washington, D.C. in early 70s, and he received a job offer in the U.S. aerospace industry. So once again, life coming full circle. Aerospace has also been a little bit of a theme in our family. So he got his dream job offer, and we moved to Florida, Melbourne, Florida, when I was 7 years old. So that was a huge step and a bold move for my parents to take. A big culture shift for the entire family, and it was a culture shock. I remember I was plopped into the first grade. I didn't speak a word of English. I was fluent in Finnish and Swedish, and so it was a huge learning curve. That's when it's a sink or swim time. You better learn fast for survival purposes, and so that just left a lasting impression on me for the rest of my life, having gone through that at an early age, being fluent in 3 languages, having to cross those cultural boundaries, and also learning how to feeling like the odd kid out and having to really find my way, pushing you out of your comfort zone. So those are just incredibly important life lessons learned. And I'm thankful to my parents for having done it because our lives have clearly, I'm sure, are very different than they would have been if we had never taken that bold move to begin with to move overseas.
Yeah, that's right. So how do you answer typical Thunderbird question? Where are you from?
Yeah, that was I also mentioned, I'm like, I love Thunderbird because it was like the first place I really feel at home because everybody has that same challenge. You never can answer with just a simple answer. It's always a complicated story. Like for me, it's born in Finland, raised in Sweden, but immigrated to the United States. I'm dual Finnish U.S. Nationality, so it's yeah, I'm a blend of both. And it was funny because then my daughter called me. She was a campus ambassador at Thunderbird. And for her name tag, she had to put where she's from. And she called me, Mom, where do I say I'm from? Because as much as my parents did it to me, we did it even more to our children, where we ended up now being two T birds with both me and my husband having global careers. We were moving all over the place all the time and juggling two global careers. And, now when we moved back from London, this was the 11th time I have moved across the Atlantic Ocean in my lifetime. So, it does get funny trying to answer the question, where are you from? Well, we're from everywhere and nowhere, but we're citizens of the world.
Yeah,
Just as
that's
Thunderbirds
what it
are.
means, right?
Yeah,
To be a citizen of the world. But now you based out of Washington D.C.
correct. Yeah. So, yep, that's you can't see it. My window, I've got the Pentagon right behind me, but it's a little bright out there, so you can't see it too well.
Okay, well, we'll talk about Washington maybe later. I guess you were destined to go to Thunderbird when after you described your childhood. But how did you hear about Thunderbird, and why did it cross your mind that you want to go to Thunderbird?
Yeah. So, well, let's see. It started with at first, I actually was pursuing more of a government track. I had studied political science, international relations for my undergraduate degree. And I did work at U.S. Department of Commerce International Trade Administration on the Nordic desks. But it was during that time, I did have a great boss at Commerce Department. She was really good. I learned a lot. But I also realized that I think I prefer to be on the industry side. We were helping US companies into the global export markets. And I realized I really think I want to be on that industry side. So I knew that I would have to, pivot, and it would be helpful to get an MBA or a business degree on top of my political science, international relations degree. So when I looked at schools, Thunderbird obviously stood out for me because of the global connection. I knew I wanted that international global focus. And so Thunderbird was unique, but I had also worked with several people that were Thunderbird alum. And so I had a good impression of the school. I had attended actually a lot of Thunderbird events as well. So I was very familiar with the school and the people, but it was the thing that really clinched it for me too was that back then Thunderbird had an exchange program with the Helsinki School of Economics MBA program.
Hmm.
And that attracted me because I had never lived in Finland after I had left when I was just a child. So I really wanted that opportunity to live and work in Finland again. So that worked out well. And then my boss at the Commerce Department actually arranged for a part-time job for me at the US Embassy in Helsinki when I was studying there. So it was just a brilliant career resume booster to be able to also have that US Embassy experience and while I was studying and doing my MBA. But that's how I ended up at Thunderbird.
That's great. So what were your favorite memories from Thunderbird time from Glendale campus?
Yeah, I mean, the Glen, well, it was always the people. I mean, at first, of course, it was always a bit of a shock getting out there to the Glendale campus back then where there just wasn't much else. But it was the people that made it so phenomenal. And just realizing all of a sudden, again, I'm with people similar, and you were similar to me in terms of having a little bit more global exposure, but it was also humbling because you think, okay, so I speak three languages, I've done this, I've done that. You get there, you're like, oh, I'm not worthy of these. My colleagues had all seen more, done more, experienced more. So you're just in such an incredible group of colleagues and cohort that you learn from each other. And so it was just an incredible experience. But the one thing that I will be eternally grateful for was probably the only school or MBA or business program of any kind anywhere in the world that offered a very unique and niche course in something called offset and counter trade. And this was something that was very unique to the aerospace and defense industry. And I found it fascinating. I took a class on it. There was a Thunderbird alum who was teaching the class. He was working at McDonnell Douglas Helicopters in Mesa, Arizona, Gary Pacific, and he came in to guest lecture one day into one of my classes, and he mentioned in that class the fact that we were on the cusp of winning what single largest bilateral defense deal between the governments of the United States and Finland for the sale of 64 F-18 fighter jets to the government of Finland. And so that perked my attention, got me excited, and I went to introduce myself to him and chatted with him. And I was on my way to the program in Helsinki, and he said, "Well, the decision's going to be made while you're there. So make sure that you keep your eyes and ears open, because if we win that program, we're going to be looking for someone pretty much just like you with your background to come work on that program." And sure enough, that is exactly what happened. So I was in my class at the MBA program. I was working at the embassy, and there was a job posting in the Helsingin Sanomat, in the Finnish main newspaper, and it was a job description as if I had written it for myself, and submitted my resume, and they called me almost the next day, and I had a job lined up before I ever graduated
Oh,
from Thunderbird.
that's amazing. That's amazing. So, how did that job turn out?
Well, yeah, pretty good, I would say, since I'm here 32 years later. I had no idea when I started that, 30 years later, I would be, in all of these phenomenal roles that I've gotten to do at the Boeing company. I mean, I remember thinking back then that, it was my Finnish connection, that made it unique for me to be. It was serendipitous. I was in the right moment of time, in the right moment of history, working on that program. But then I thought, well, after I'm done with that program, I'm not sure what I'll do next. The beauty of Boeing, while I was working the Finnish program, and I started in St. Louis, which was the headquarters of McDonnell Douglas back then. And then 2 years later, they sent me to work in the office in Helsinki. So I was in Finland for a couple years after that. But then they kept on throwing one incredible opportunity after another my way. I became the country manager of Switzerland, and I inherited Switzerland in the Nordic region, and I kept on adding portfolio after portfolio. And I realized, well, it's not just about the fact that, I had this Finnish connection. It's about transferable skills, and now I was ingrained in the company. I understood and had learned so much, and they were giving me incredible job opportunities to continue to broaden my horizons. So, yeah, it was a great experience.
So, what do you think? What, I don't know, skills or tactics did help you to be successful in your first role and grow afterwards in at Boeing?
Yeah, I mean, so again, it's important to, of course, first, learn the company, and so it was great that I started in the headquarters on the US side of things, to really learn how do things work in the big corporate machine. But that's very important learning. And then it was equally fantastic to have the experience of, then when they sent me to live in Finland for the program, to be able to utilize, my cross-cultural communication skills. That was one thing that was, even though, we think, okay, it's not that many cultural huge differences, Finns and Americans, but there still are. There was a lot of bridging the communication and making sure that everybody's on the same page. And I actually ended up teaching a class back in St. Louis, preparing, because we were sending our technical teams to live and work in Finland for the
Hmm.
duration of the program. So I was actually doing a cultural sensitivity training class, for the families that were about to embark on this journey of theirs and move to Finland for several
So
years.
maybe you can give us an example of maybe one or two cultural differences between our two people, two
Sure. Well,
nations.
yeah. So I think between Finns, probably the biggest one is just communication styles. Americans tend to be much more comfortable with small talk and a little bit more chatty and very engaged in conversation. The Finns are a little bit shyer, more reserved. They kind of a little bit more direct, speak directly to the point. So I remember there was one of our colleagues that had a difficult time in one of his meetings because he just wasn't getting any reaction. It was just silence. And finally, after a while, he's just like, "Come on, you guys are just killing me." It's like, "Would you say something?" and I'm like, it's okay. It's like this is perfectly normal. There's nothing's wrong. So it's things like that. But certainly for the families, American families moving to Finland, they had to also get used to more Arctic conditions of living and driving in snow and ice and making that their everyday life. So I mean, there was just a whole host of things. But at the end of the day, we had a fabulous program. It was F-18s on time, on schedule, within budget. It was a dream program, and everything went really well. And I think all sides were very happy with how it all turned out. So it was a great starting point to my career at Boeing.
That's great. And did you have any mentors that helped you along the way to?
Yeah, so I have been really lucky with mentors. I think one of the great things was in the first person who hired me into the company. She was one of the back then we still, I mean, the aerospace and defense industry is tends to be a very male dominated industry. I got very lucky where my first boss and the person who hired me into the company was a female, and she ended up being an incredible mentor throughout my career, really helpful. So when we think about on whose shoulders we stand, the people that we learn from, the people who guide us, the people who really help us on our journeys, she's certainly one of them. But there have been many. So I think mentorship is absolutely incredibly important. And that's why now that I'm in 30 years plus into my career, I'm trying to give back as much as possible and mentor as many younger, newer leaders as possible to give the same benefit that I had when I was coming in to the business.
And do you have any advice to women aspiring to senior leadership positions and within your
Yeah, I
company?
think absolutely. So sometimes I think for women, we can be our biggest, detractors where we think that we might not be up to the task or capable of doing something. We hold ourselves back. So my biggest message to all women and just never doubt yourself. Realize that if somebody is giving you an opportunity and asking you to try something, give it a shot and don't think you have to be perfect and don't think that you have to have 100% of the skill set required to do a job. Nobody is that perfect leader. Nobody is that perfect employee that knows how to do everything. That's what teams are for. So just take the chance, believe in yourself, have the confidence. If somebody has the confidence in you to give you that opportunity, just go for it and do it. And you will surprise yourself and amaze yourself of what you can actually accomplish and do. I remember in the beginning of my career, like I said, I couldn't in my wildest dreams imagine that I would end up doing all the jobs that I have ultimately gotten to do at the Boeing company and have risen into the executive ranks of Boeing. It was hard for me to imagine that when I first started. So take the chance and just go for it.
So just recently, before you moved to Washington D.C., you were running Boeing in United Kingdom.
Yeah.
What it was like to be the head of Boeing in the largest probably market for you
Yeah.
for the company.
Yeah. Well, it was fabulous experience. I loved every minute of it. But it was, of course it was another one of those big gulp moments when you get asked to do that. I came into that role after a very long line of distinguished sirs that had that job before me and local British natives. And so it was I was a very different model in terms of leadership model that they were trying out, to do that, and so it was an honor and a privilege to get to be asked to do it, but and then the biggest surprise for me probably was that it went so well. Like I said, I loved every moment of it. So I think, again, it goes back to the point of there's not just one type of leader or one perfect person for any job. It can take on different forms. And the critical part is then you round out your team. So I had a brilliant local team around me. So for my shortcomings of the things that I didn't maybe wasn't as well versed in all things UK, my local team around me were there to guide me and help me on that. What I brought to the table was over 3 decades of experience working in the aerospace and defense industry, working at Boeing, and really understanding how to bring the greater Boeing enterprise to bear for the benefit of the UK market, and leadership. So it turned out to be a fantastic experience.
What was your day like? If you can maybe describe a day in life of a country president for Boeing.
Yeah, well, I would say a lot of so the day was, I would say a lot of engagements. One example, breakfast meetings, going to one of a bazillion. I could have been probably triple and quadruple booked every day of the week for breakfast, lunches, and dinners. A lot of you get invited to some really great events because of the role that you're in. So it was a lot of speaking. So I did have to do a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of roundtables, a lot of panels. But that was the external part, especially interacting with the government. So very much building up the relationship and the partnership with whether it's the Ministry of Defense or the Department for Business and Trade or the Department for Transport. So a lot of government related senior level engagements and meetings at a very frequent basis. Then internally, I had a team. We had over 4,000 employees. Now we're up to 6,000 with this acquisition of Spirit Aerosystems. So a big internal population that was very geographically dispersed even across the UK landscape. So a lot of it was also spent just stitching the teams together, making sure that we're an integrated team across the UK, and just spending a lot of time in different geographic sites of the country. And then again, just leading that internal team. So it was kind of exciting all the way around, and it spanned both defense as well as commercial. So whether it was focusing on our defense execution programs or winning new defense programs, or our commercial business, and then the Spirit acquisition that came, one of the biggest sites of Spirit is actually in the UK. So that was a big part towards the end of my tenure there. So a lot of diversity of experience that I got to see while I was there.
That's great. And so when you have so many things on your calendar, how do you pick those few priorities that's very important to accomplish today or tomorrow? How do you prioritize things? And it's
Yeah.
more like a the tactical question
Yeah. No.
of
Well,
staying
but
organized and focused.
yeah. Well, it's tactical, but also strategic. So we do I think, try to do a good job of setting out, our strategic priorities and objectives and goals for the year to start the year with. So let that be your guiding light. So it comes down to, if I'm doing this, that, or the other thing, how is that helping me achieve the objectives that, we have set out for the year? And then you go kind of start picking and choosing what you're spending your time on, because you're right, there's not enough hours in a day and you can't do everything, and you certainly can't do it by yourself. So that's the other point, was divide and conquer. Okay, so if I can't be cloned and I can't be in three places at once, then make sure I have the right team, which I did. I had a fabulous team in the UK to send my delegates to represent me at the other events. And then again, prioritization based on what are we measuring ourselves on when all is said and done, based on the goals and objectives set for the year. So it's strategic and it's tactical in terms of, okay, who's available, who's got the time, and who can go where.
Excellent. And so you said a few times that it's important to have a great team around you. What are your hiring principles? Like, what are you looking for in people when you hire to be a member of your team?
Yeah. I think that's a really critically important question. And I think the answer to it is, you always make sure you know yourself and you know your team, and you understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and where are the capability gaps. And then make sure that you're hiring people who are filling your capability gaps. So again, as I said, one leader does not have the answers to everything and does not have the full skill set to do everything. So we need to make sure that, rather than, there's often a tendency and a bias, probably an unconscious bias, where people might hire someone who they feel comfortable with, or, might think like them or be like them, but do the opposite. Hire somebody who is going to give you a diversity of perspective, or comes from a totally different background. I remember I learned it early on in my career working in a company like I do. I mean, it was almost kind of intimidating being around so many brilliant engineers and scientists, and not to mention military leaders, generals, fighter pilots. And you think, oh my goodness, they have such incredible skills, but they're very different skills from the skills I have. And by complementing each other and bringing the diversity of a team together, it's amazing how much more you get done and can accomplish by rounding out the picture by having that diversity of experiences and skills on the same team.
So that's a great advice. And what cultural fit means for you? You when you hire people, do you look at cultural fit? And if yes, what is it like? How would you describe it in your own words?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Culture can mean many things. I mean, I think from a Boeing lens and an organizational culture right now, our values and behaviors as a company are critically important. So right now, and I think it's because we're so focused on it, that's why culture to me is not necessarily even culture of different nationalities or backgrounds. One thing that is important is that we are hiring people who espouse our values and behaviors, the things that we need to do to be the great iconic company that the Boeing company has been known to be. So I think it's important to make sure that we have people who believe and can live by those values and behaviors. That's one aspect of culture. Now, on the totally different part of culture, which is more the Thunderbird, like different nationalities, languages, those that is absolutely critical too for getting it right when we're pursuing global business pursuits. There is nothing more important than us being a global company, having the right kind of people locally interacting with the customers, can speak the same language. It's a different type of conversation when you have somebody who is ingrained in the culture, can speak the language. And so we have to have a balance. But like I said, you need different strengths and skill sets. So in our business, combining that local knowledge and culture of our teams that are deployed all over the world, it's also important for them to understand what does it really take for things to get done at the Boeing company. And so you want to marry them up with uh, the right partners back in the US and in the headquarters, so to speak. So it's getting that blend right is what makes, I think, the perfect team and what allows us to achieve success.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the future a little bit. How do you see the artificial intelligence changing aerospace industry overall, and how do you see that future in 5 years? We're going to have self-driving planes anytime soon?
Yeah, well, so I think aerospace and especially aerospace, I think we're almost like a front runner in that area where I think when you say AI, a lot of people are thinking generative AI. In our sector, it's not just it's not really about the generative AI. It's about the technology that we have been developing and working on for years and years that already, I mean, at the end of the day, airplanes really kind of almost do fly themselves. And certainly in the defense division, we've got things like the MQ-25 Stingray, the MQ-28 Ghost Bat. They're drones. They're uncrewed autonomous aerial vehicles, that fly themselves, or our Whisk, which is going to be a commercial air taxi, basically. So we've got those capabilities and technologies, and it's not just in the platforms themselves, but it's how we're designing airplanes. I mean, so the digital technologies that have enabled us to now early on in the design process, we're producing digital twins so that before we're in the production side of things, we already know how systems are going to work together, and it's all using computer-based simulation and modeling and all of the artificial intelligence and learning machine models. We can do a lot up front in the design phase before ever launching a new product. So that's critically important. The other area where it manifests itself is in maintenance, using data analytics for predictive maintenance, and being able to make sure that you're addressing issues before they become problems on your aircraft. So we've been using a lot of these tools, and they're really incorporated in the entire life cycle of our products already, from design to production to the aftermarket service and maintenance. So we're just going to continue to see more of it. Yes, autonomous airplanes are, especially in the defense side, huge focus on that, and a key focus, of course, on how do we get the smaller, newer, attritable platforms to and be interoperable with the legacy systems so that they all work together as a system. So there's a lot going on in that field, but I think aerospace has kind of been a front runner in that area for quite some time. And now, of course, then the generative AI is the other part that we need to incorporate in. And something I'm looking at now is how do we incorporate AI tools into our bid and proposal process. So when we're putting in these thousands and thousands of pages of, in terms of proposals that go into the US government or foreign governments, how do we have better tools that enable us to use those when we're submitting, multi-billion dollar proposal offers into the customer. So a
Yeah.
lot's happening in this space.
So
So
industry is changing with AI, and the skills changing with AI. Like, do you have an advice to young kids graduating from colleges? So what they need to be focusing on to be successful in the new AI environment?
yeah. So I mean the technology, of course, it's important and learning how to incorporate it and use it. And yes, of course, there's going to be some jobs that might not be around in the future because they can be done better by AI and other tools. I would say the most important thing for future leaders and people going into the job market is there's always going to be a critical need for the human in the loop and for the human leaders. And so focus on the things also to make yourself a better leader, a better employee, a better coworker through improving your emotional intelligence. Those are the human factors. It's the soft side of the business skills. And those are going to be more critical than ever. If we've got technology and tools that can do the other stuff, then make sure that you're improving your skill sets in some of these softer skills. So, emotional intelligence is, I think, an absolute critical success factor in making sure that you're improving yourself in that area.
And one thing that you mentioned in the graduation speech was go out of comfort zone, and
Yeah.
this podcast is my project to go out of my comfort zone. Well, I wanted to ask you, maybe if you can give us have a story of you going out of your comfort zone, and what it brought you, and how did
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, well, I think probably I've had a lot of jobs in my 3 decades at Boeing, and almost every time you jump into something that's you didn't think you were able to do, you're going out of your comfort zone. But I think for me, it's been the combination of not just changing jobs and organizations. The first one was probably when I had been for quite some time in the original group that I had started on the Finnish F-18 program, and I took on Switzerland. So the first one was when I jumped out of that core team of business development and I jumped into a business unit, and I became our manager of Europe, but it was totally different environment. So, and we also ended up moving to Europe again during that time. We lived just outside of the Geneva area, and I had to all of a sudden be using French quite a bit, which I had studied, but I hadn't used it in a long, long time. So it was the combination of taking on a brand new job, being located in a brand new geography, in a new business unit, and just kind of learning things all over again. So that's always, but it's amazing how much you grow every time you take that push, go out of your comfort zone. And that's what brings you to these later moments in life where you get offered these types of responsibilities, like go be the president of Boeing UK, or go lead global business development and worry about the whole world for a while. But every one of those is a push out of your comfort zone, and you have to always take a little bit of a gulp that can I really do this? But then again, it's amazing. People wouldn't offer you the opportunity if they didn't think you could do it. So it's a
Right.
matter of just believing in yourself and knowing that you can do it and making sure that you've got that great team around you that will help you achieve the results that are expected of the team.
Thank you for sharing that. What advice would you give to a 20-year-old self, having all the experience you have right now?
Yeah, I think it's probably some of the funny things I laugh at when I look back at my younger years is, you got to take a step back and realize that your career is actually a life journey. And you have to look at different snapshots of time and realize that there's going to be moments in time that you're going to be working really hard and you're going to be trying to build your base and skill set and charging really hard. But then there's going to be other moments in time where maybe your focus should not be, okay, what is my next promotion or what is my next opportunity? I had to go back and take steps back and forth when we were starting a family. At that point, I realized, okay, you know what? At this point, I just want to hang on to my job. I want to try to figure it out. How can I be a mother and still keep my job and do what I do? But, I don't want to do anything crazy. I don't want to change jobs right now. I don't want to be promoted right now. I just want to keep status quo, and that's okay. There's things like when it was our wedding and I had just changed jobs, and our wedding was in Finland, but we lived in the United States. And because of my new job, I was supposed to be at an event right after the wedding. And so I minimized the time that I was probably the last one to arrive in Finland and the first one to leave because I felt like I had to be somewhere. And I think in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that's silly. Everybody would understand. It's like, sorry, I'm getting married. I'm going to be gone for a little while here. So they realize that you've got your whole life to live and just take it at pace and remember what's important at which points in time in your career and your life. It's all worked out great for me in the long run, but yeah, you're always wiser when you're older.
That's a great advice. Thank you. So Thunderbird played a pivotal role in your life and in the life of your family. Do you have a message to the whole Thunderbird community, to
Yes.
alums and students, maybe?
Yeah, I think, well, Thunderbird as an educational institute, we need you now more than ever. Same with T-Birds and alums that are out there in the world. So these are really interesting geopolitical times that we're living in. The world is changing at a fast pace. I can't think of better suited individuals and educational institutions to be preparing for what we're up against right now in terms of just the amount of change, whether it's technological change, geopolitical shifts. But the Thunderbird community espouses all that. And as I said in my graduation speech, my goodness, if every person in the world had that same Thunderbird mindset and just had a little bit of that taste of Thunderbird mystique, the world would be a better place. So we need Thunderbird now more than ever. And it is, I would say, more relevant today than it has ever been.
Yeah, that's true. And my last question: what's your next dream travel destination? I understand that you traveled the world so many times and crossed the ocean, but is there anything on your list that you would like, a place that you would love to see and
Yes,
experience?
there is one place that has been on my bucket list for a while, but I have not managed to get there. It was a friend of mine, or it was a coworker out of our Bern office in Switzerland. She had been everywhere in the world and had done it all. And I asked her, this was like almost 25 years ago, like what is your favorite place in the world? And she said, Bora Bora. So I've had Bora Bora on my bucket list ever since, and I have not managed to get there. But one of these days, I will get to Bora Bora.
Excellent. Well, safe travels to Bora Bora, and
Yeah,
I really appreciate your time, Maria. I really appreciate your wisdom and all the advice that you gave and your stories. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you, Alex. Such a pleasure to see you and to be able to share my story with the Thunderbird community.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.